Last weekend, when I made a post about what Tiger Base did, we were invited to inspect their cells. When we walked in, I saw the inmates there. I asked them, how many people were moved from this cell this morning? The officers who were there with me turned as to cast this kind of threatening look at them, and the guy kept quiet. Everywhere was calm. When we left, one of the NBA officials that I went with told me, you have just put these people into trouble. These people will deal with them when you have left. At about 4:30 yesterday, I was driving out from Kilimanjaro at Amakohia Road. Just by Warehouse Roundabout, I saw a Hilux bus emblazoned clearly Office of the Governor, Monitoring and Compliance Unit. Then I saw another small bus, hijet bus, with Imo State registration number. The two cars stopped abruptly. Some menacing looking men came down from the Hilux car and from the bus and swooped on those petty traders along the road. Because of the Gestapo manner of their approach, I was scared. I thought they were kidnappers. So when those people scampered for safety, leaving their ways, they now took the choicest loot from there, entered the car immediately, drove about 100 meters away, and saw another man who was selling tiger nuts and kwili, what we call kwili, and turned the barrel upside down, and everything inside the barrel turned inside the gutter and then on the ground there. And immediately, they made a U-turn just in front of a former Mbari kitchen and sped off, heading towards Bank Road. I didn't want to be confrontational, of course. People wielding weapons and looking very rough. You can't have a conversation or any kind of engagement with such people. So what I did, I quietly made a U-turn myself, parked my car in front of the warehouse, and got down from my vehicle and interviewed the man who was carrying kwili and tiger nuts. And amid sobs, the man was telling me that he didn't know who they were. And then his brothers were helping him pick whatever they could from the ground, of course. You know, I wonder if they are going to sell those things again. And I asked him his name. Reluctantly, he told me. I got his phone number and I left. I went to the other section where they picked those items from the people selling there, and the young man told me his name and listed for me the things they took from his shop: iPod, headsets, chargers, very quality materials. Gave me his name, gave me his phone number. I walked down to the other man who was selling head warmer and caps, and he told me they picked up about 4 caps and 1 head warmer from his shop. I told him his name, and I also got his phone number. I was shocked that such a thing could come from people who are agents of the state. Is that how to enforce compliance? I don't support street trading. Of course, they have always made the announcement that street trading is outlawed here. But then there is a more civil way, more meaningful way to enforce such laws, and not in such manner. For me, that was armed robbery, because they're not going to give account of what they have picked up. They just went and picked whatever they wanted. So they were not packing the ways, all of them, or asking them to leave that place. They just picked those things and ran away, just like armed robbers. So I was very shocked with what I saw, and I felt I shouldn't keep quiet about it. And I'm expecting that the state will react. Oh my God. I'll answer this question with another scenario. Last weekend, when I made a post about what Tiger Base did, we were invited to inspect their cells. When we walked in, I saw the inmates there. And then I knew, of course, that they have decongested the cells. Some of them were removed from the cells just to create that ambience of compliance and decency. And then I asked them, how many people were moved from this cell this morning? Someone spoke in a muffled tone. And then I turned. And the officers who were there with me turned as to cast this kind of threatening look at them. And the guy kept quiet. I turned, I said, who said that? Everywhere was calm. And they were exchanging suggestive glances with each other to tell you that they were not allowed to speak up. And when we left, one of the NBA officials that I went with told me, you have just put these people into trouble. These people will deal with them when you have left. What does that suggest to you? Here the way they operate is such that there is no humanity in the way they operate. There is no sensibility in the way they operate. They operate like hoodlums. They operate like people who belong to the Stone Age. There is no accountability. The way they operate is such that they victimize these people. You are not allowed to speak. You are not allowed to ask questions. You are not allowed to interrogate the process, the procedure, and the manner in which they operate. That is what is suggested. That even when they had left, the people who were there could not speak to me because they feared that if they speak to this man, we don't know who this man is, these people can come after them and pick their things again. So they were scared, and I was surprised. The three that spoke to me saw the way I was dressed. Of course, I was in court yesterday, so I was still wearing my shirt and then my lawyer's trousers. So the three of them looked at me and said, okay, maybe we could trust this man. He may not be one of them. And then told me his name, whether that is fake or real, I do not know. His name and the phone number. Perhaps I think the phone numbers are correct because one of them used the phone number to send me the picture of the man whose ways were turned upside down, the Aliyu man. I asked them to snap that barrow and the goods why they were scattered on the ground, and they sent it to me. And of course, I also took pictures yesterday. I did that stealthily so that they would know I was taking pictures. You know how they behave. They could come and smash your phone, whereas there is no crime in recording such things. Of course, there was a judgment last week that you can film policemen. It's a judgment of not last week, I think last month. So it's no longer a crime to film a policeman or to film anybody who is conducting himself in such manner. Yeah. So what it showed me was that these people are not allowed to speak up. They are not allowed to challenge. They are not even allowed to complain. They don't have anybody to complain to. So that tells you the kind of society we live in. Sometime in January or February this year, there was an incident at Toronto where lives were lost. You remember? ENTRACO. I may not be correct. Maybe this year, maybe late last year. But I remember vividly that sometime late last year or early this year, there was an encounter between sellers and ENTRACO, who were also trying to enforce something like this. They had clash with the people who sell things, and many lives were lost. Is that how to go about compliance? Is that how to go about monitoring? How to go about enforcement of one law or the other? That is not. You also remember, I saw with my two eyes, somewhere at Warehouse Roundabout, where a car crushed someone who was trying to scamper for safety from ENTRACO menace. I saw that with my two eyes. It was on the internet. I think they were chasing the guy. I don't know what he did. He was trying to cross the road, and an oncoming vehicle crushed him to death. So those things remind us how these people operate. And let me tell you, this could be the same people who are being recycled into these units. And why must these units employ people who are not trained, people who don't have humanity, people who don't have any sense of decency or decorum? Why? I don't understand it. So what I saw yesterday was a reminder of what how ENTRACO operates in this state. So that's why I made the comparison between what I saw yesterday and what ENTRACO has been doing in this state. Even though currently banned, I don't know if they have been recalled. For we lawyers, we are trained to interrogate issues from their origin. An outsider may say, oh, ENTRACO is not supposed to do this, or VIO is not supposed to do that, without knowing the powers the law establishing them has granted them. Now, there was a Court of Appeal decision arising from Asaba some 2 years or 3 years ago, saying that VIO has no powers to do vehicle inspection on the road, that they must do vehicle inspection in their office. And commonsensical speaking, I agree with that, because, of course, you know, if you buy a car, you are given, amongst other documents, roadworthiness certificates, which lasts for 1 year. And that roadworthiness certificate is issued from the office of the VIO. Now, let me paint this scenario to you. You bought a car in February of 2026, and VIO issues you roadworthiness certificate that will expire in February 2027 or January 2027, as the case may be. And in March, the same VIO comes to the road and tells you to stop for him to inspect your car. What has changed from February to March of the same year? You inspected my car and gave me a certificate of roadworthiness. Why are you inspecting it again? What it ought to be is inspecting that car at the expiration of that roadworthiness certificate. Because you are assuming that, oh, this car is roadworthy for another 11 months or for another 12 months. Therefore, when I will be ripe for another check, will be in another 12 months. And that has to be done in your office. Before you issue me another certificate to say, oh, okay, this car is roadworthy from February 2027 to February 2028 or January 2028, you must have inspected that car. So what are you doing on the road? Why are you coming to re-inspect the cars you have inspected in your office? Of course, you know they don't do any inspection. Now, I made a piece last year in an open letter asking the Attorney General of the state to advise whosoever that is in charge of VIO to obey the judgment of court and leave the roads. That letter was ignored. I got a lot of backlash, and some people were saying, oh, of course, paid to say so. Oh, that law, the judgment is in Asaba. The VIO is in Imo State. The law that establishes VIO in Asaba is not the same that establishes it in Imo State. We don't work the same thing, trying to distract us. I said, okay, if that is the case, let me now understand the law that establishes VIO in Imo State. I looked for it. I went from library to library. I went from law office to law office looking for this law. I couldn't find it. One day I was driving and one of them stopped someone and was inspecting the car, And then I stopped and called him. I said, who's your head here? And he pointed at one man. I called him. I said, please, I want to understand. Under which ministry is VIO? He says, oh, we are under Imo State Ministry of Transport. I said, good. Do you have any authority to inspect? Yes, we have. Imo State government has empowered us to inspect cars. I said, really? He said, yes, that they have law that empowers them to inspect cars. I said, okay. I drove off. When I came back, I resolved, I must know what this law says. After looking for this law without finding it, I was looking for the best approach to get this law. Then I stumbled on Imo State Freedom of Information Law number 8 of 2012. I studied it, and then somewhere in section 6, it's provided for ways of asking for information or asking for record from any public office. I think in that section 6, it states that if you apply for record in a public institution, they have 7 days to respond. And if they do not respond, somewhere in section 9, it says it's a crime. That institution or the officer is liable upon conviction for 500,000 naira. So I said, okay, that's a good one. I now wrote upon that law, I wrote a letter to the clerk of Imo State House of Assembly requesting for the law that establishes the VIO. When the person who went to deliver the letter got there, the person who received the letter, obviously not the clerk, looked at the letter and said, oh, can I call this number here? He said, yeah, you can call the number. They called me. I said, oh, lawyer, I can see a letter in my office. I don't think we have this law. I said, don't worry, don't be in a hurry. The law allows you 7 days to reply me. Don't be in a hurry. Check very well. If you don't have it, write me and say, I do not have it. If you have it, then respond in 7 days. You have a latitude of time to work with it. Okay, no problem. On the 6th day, I got a call from someone who introduced herself as the deputy clerk and said, oh, we have seen that law and I have given a letter in response to someone to deliver to you. I said, okay, the person can deliver it to my office. And I got to the office and I saw their reply. I was happy to see that. And they told me the name of the law and told me what I must do to obtain that law. I have to pay certification fee. So just yesterday I paid that certification fee and I was surprised. It's a huge amount. I was told the law is 19 pages and you pay 1,000 for each page. Maybe they thought I was going to deter anybody. So I went to UBA, I made the payment and I have the printout and I've communicated them, I have made the payment and I've promised that the law will be available by Tuesday. When I get it, I'm going to look at it and know if the law empowers VIO to stay on the road and do inspection, and if the law empowers them to be both arbiter, both prosecutor, and judge at the same time. I do not think that the law would tell them to penalize anybody on the road. There should be a process. You can't penalize someone. It's only the courts that can impose punishments. And that is why I want to check if the law empowers them to penalize someone and take money from the person, whether official or unofficial. If it's otherwise, then we are going to challenge it in court and get a pronouncement just like we have in Asaba. So that's what prompted the move I made. There is no format. You don't even need to put the law, the Freedom of Information Law. But if you can, Freedom of Information Domestication Law number 8 of 2012. It's been domesticated in Imo State. You may have to quote it so that they will know the consequence of not responding, because the consequence of not responding is actually grievous. Because the law says in section 6 that they must respond in 7 days, and then says it's a crime if you do not respond and the penalty you have to pay. So nobody wants to be convicted, and then they have to respond. So it doesn't have to be in any format. Just address it to the clerk, request for so law, or even if you do not know the law, you can say, is there any law that establishes so and so? I want to have access to it, and they will respond. I feel 7 days is enough time if there is any sense of honesty, because the request we made is simple. I have made it easy for them. They do not need to bother themselves with too much inquiries. I have the numbers of those people, have their names, so it's not fiction. And I have said I am willing to release their names and the pictures, so I have made the work easy for them. If we have sense of responsibility, I mean, a government that has sense of responsibility should by now acting on that. Call the head of that unit. Hey, look at what I saw on Facebook or internet. Is this correct? You have 2 days to respond. Call out these people. I want to know the people who went on for this operation. I made it easy for them. I quoted the number of the vehicle. So it's so easy for them. They can do this in 1 day. So 7 days is a latitude of time. And then if the government doesn't respond, I will now make it formal, because what I did is not formal. I just made it through it open so they could react. If they do not respond, then I will do a letter, a formal letter with my office letterhead to the head of that unit to make those requests, and maybe give them 14 days. If they do not comply, then I will institute an action against that unit. And of course, Imo State government will be a party, because they are vicariously liable for whatever those guys have done. So this is what we intend to do. People are driven by different motives, by different things. I do not think it's wise to relent. I can tell you for free that if we do not do the little things we do, this society will crumble. If we don't hold government accountable, a lot will go wrong. I know the few things that the little activism we have engaged in have done for us. In our sector, in the justice sector, I know the few innovations that have come in because of the activism we have been doing in the last 1 year. I recall there was a time we did not have a chief judge in Imo State. The wrong person was appointed. And it was through this activism that the government did the correct thing after I was incarcerated. I was incarcerated on 25th of September, and on 26th they swore in the right person as the chief judge. They swore in someone as Attorney General. The Judicial Service Commission has been appointed. The old one has been disbanded. A lot has happened. A lot has happened. So imagine that every other citizen does what we do in the sectors where they find themselves. In the health sector, in the agri sector, in any other sector, in the finance sector. I can do everything. We can only do what we have to do. If what we do in the justice sector is replicated in other sectors, this society will be good. So I do not think it's wise to cower. I do not think it's wise to show any element of cowardice. You know, if you know what you are doing is the right thing, do it. And then don't be dissuaded by intimidations or by imprisonment or by detention or by police harassment. You shouldn't be. You're doing the right thing. And of course, it was, I think, Martin Luther who said that a man who has discovered nothing to die for is not fit to live. And then, I think it's Desmond Impilo Tutu that said that anybody who keeps quiet during oppression is enabling the oppressor. So, why should we keep quiet when things are going wrong? Why should we keep quiet when someone is being oppressed? You're enabling oppressors. So we should stand out. We should stand. Remember, without that EndSARS demonstrations 6 years ago, I think, 2020, there would have been SARS by now, even though they were baptized and it became even more horrible than it used to be. This tiger base, could be a fallout from EndSARS. So what I'm saying is that we should learn how to hold government accountable. When you hold government accountable, you are not insulting anybody. You are not opposing anybody. But here, because of the way we are raised, because of our African society, where a child is told, hey, shut up, you beat a child and tell the child, if I hear pim, I will deal with you. So we grow with that kind of fear that even when someone is oppressing you, you don't want to talk. You don't want to ask questions. So I'm encouraging everybody, let's begin to ask questions. It is only when we hold government accountable that this society will begin to change. I will keep encouraging everybody. Let's be alive to our civic responsibility. Holding government accountable is civic responsibility. And nobody is going to do it for us except ourselves.